Jonathan.
What's going on, everybody? We are live back on LinkedIn Live, YouTube Live. We're super excited to have everyone here for episode 16 of Selling During Crisis. I'm your host, Jonathan Otero, and this podcast and this show is talking about all things sales. And I'm super excited to have my guest on today, Peter Ekstrom, who's the founder and CEO of Gold Call Training. He's also a professor, an instructor, and a mentor for sales and marketing communications at Pace University in New York, where I'm originally from. So let me bring Peter in to say hello. Peter, how you doing, sir?
Jonathan, better than yesterday, not as good as tomorrow. How's that?
Awesome. Well, listen, I appreciate you. Listen, first of all, you're near and dear to my heart when it comes to sales. So we share that in common. We've got the New York theme. I'm originally a New Yorker, even though I'm here in sunny Orlando, Florida now. I got to find a way to get you to come down and enjoy fun in the sun. But that's all right. You just represent for us in New York. You enjoy the food and the pizza down there. But I want to ask you.
And the change of seasons, Jonathan.
And the change of seasons. That's right. Now, Peter also spent time for you guys who are connected with me, who are Floridians. Peter also spent some time in Tampa. He's great. He went to school at the University of Tampa, so he knows what it's like to be in sunny. Go Spartans. He knows what it's like. But I'm excited, Peter, to have you on and talk about all things sales. For the time that I've got you, I appreciate you doing that. So let me start off with this, Peter. Let me ask you a question. Let's jump right into it because for the folks,
how hard the question's going to be?
We're going to go deep because the people who watch this show and the people who are interested in this topic are sales professionals who are struggling right now with how to sell in a digital world. And I believe it is my personal belief. This is just my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. Take it for what it's worth. That once everything is all done and we go back to some sense of normalcy, you're still going to have to learn how to sell over the laptop. There's going to be those buyers and those prospects who say, you know what, before I give you permission and grant you time into my office, let's set up a quick Zoom or whatever meeting, Teams, and all the WebExes and all the things you could talk about. Let's set that up first for 15 minutes just to see if our priorities align. And then we can talk about setting up a meeting. So I really feel that a person like you can come in and add some value to the show. So thank you for doing that. And I want to start off with figuring out, what is the Gold Call Training? What is that all about? Tell me a little bit about that.
All right. Well, boy, you give me a hot potato to kick things off. Nice going, Jonathan. All right. I'm going to try to make a long story short. Right now, I'm in my own business. And I make contact with prospects, not only over the phone, but through social media, most of it LinkedIn. I make contact with prospects, and then through a quick dialogue that I call the Gold Call, I am able to get a new appointment with a prospect on behalf of my client, put to the calendar in under 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Okay. So the reason for the Gold Call was that in the course of making calls, for me, like a lot of people, it's always been a numbers game, right? More dials, the more people you'll get to talk to, and a percentage of those people will meet with you. But as a solopreneur working by myself, handling 5 clients at one time, I just don't have time for a 25-minute phone call with a prospect that has an endless list of objections, whatever, brush offs. So I had to come up, and first of all, what we're up against now is attention. I'm trying to get people to pay attention to me long enough just so I can ask some key business questions. And as long as I'm okay with getting a no, I'm going to be even happier with a yes. But balancing my expectations and a lot of other moving parts with the Gold Call, it helped me to speak clearly in short sound bites, because that's how people receive information today. They've been trained by Twitter, tweets, and text messages. So the bandwidth that we used to have to make conversation is like this now. It used to be this, right? When we mailed letters. So cold calling became very complicated, very cumbersome, with a lot of anguish. I spent a lot of time. I got blisters on my fingers from dialing the phone and hardly talking to anybody. So I wanted to treat and that's how I came up with Gold. I want to treat every opportunity I have with a prospect like it was gold, like it was the last one I'd get. So started parsing dialogue, choreographing the English language, romancing the English language rather, just choreographing my dialogue into something that makes sense quickly with prospects and gets me to first base. All right, that's about the shortest I can make it. The best thing to do if you're looking for the Gold Cut is to check it out, the Gold Call Show on YouTube. The Gold Call Show on YouTube. And I guarantee it'll do a much better job explaining the Gold Call than I just did. But I gave it a good crack.
No, you did a great job. I appreciate it. I did check it out over the weekend after we spoke, and I appreciate that. I got some good tips and tricks. But I want to know one of the things you said there that was key that I want to take a deeper dive into is you said that before the time that we had to make a first impression was here, and then with your
Right.
hands visually, you
Yeah.
shrunk it down. I mean, they say that the average attention span, or that we have 6 seconds to make a first impression. It's a shorter attention span than a goldfish. And my what I laugh because I say, if we're now selling in a digital world, and you mentioned social media and all these things, for those folks who are struggling with how to sell over a laptop, with how to use social media to engage,
Right.
with having such a short attention span and such a short time to make a first impression,
Right.
how can we stay unique and present and stand out?
All right. That's a great segue question here. I'll sum it up, right? Say less to sell more. All right. One more time. Say less to sell more. All right. So you're saying less, you're texting less. What does that mean? That means basically taking a description of something that would take X amount of words in a sentence and trying to, well, say the same thing with half the amount of words. That's the puzzle. That's the game. And if you get into it, you look at it that way, you'll start to advance yourself as a great communicator because every sentence is a puzzle. How can I say this better with half the words that are in the sentence now? That's how I came up with it. So saying less is your key. And as I was going back before, just to summarize here, that we're living in a digital society. Everything's ones and zeros. It's on or off. It's short. It's 100. Well, it used to be 130 something characters. Now they got it up to 250 something. But there's brackets around communicated message in text, right? So you got to do the same thing for speech to make them synonymous and make them the ability to transpose text to speech, speech to text. So we're living in a text world, and its impact is growing. So we've got to be quick on our feet with the ability to transpose text to speech and vice versa. But most importantly, when it comes to speech, people tend to talk too much, including people like me. I have all I can do to pull back on the reins and try to express myself in as few words without monopolizing the conversation. And that's really the problem with most salespeople, is that they feel they need to monopolize conversation so that they wear down the resistance of the prospect and shield themselves from the terrible bruising brush offs, right? I mean, that bruise their ego. I mean, who wants to subject themselves to that?
Right. Yeah, you're 100% right. And you know where I think it lies, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, because you've seen it from both different perspectives.
Right.
I think it is I think it is due to a lack of training, or in other words, poor training, older methods that I guess people have felt like it worked in the past. So since that's what they feel comfortable with, if it worked once, it could work again. And I think where people are missing the boat is that they're not understanding that the buyer journey has changed. Buyers are now the hunters. We're no longer the sales hunters anymore. But because it's a digital world, by the time they're getting to us, what knowledge we used to be able to educate the buyer, they already have that education. And I think that what you do at Pace University with teaching a course in sales and marketing, I think is so key, because I think everyone, because I believe everybody sells in one way or another. I believe everyone should take a course in college about sales. Do you agree?
I couldn't agree more, because you're going to have to negotiate. It's a skill, right? You want to market. You want a marketable skill. If you can express yourself in ways that persuade people to see a point or get the picture, right? Get the image, get the message, that sort of thing. You're way ahead of it than most any other student who's 19, 20 years old coming out of college. Most kids, they were born with an iPhone or a Samsung in their hand, so they haven't really had much. And this COVID with e-learning, e-classrooms hasn't helped, right? It's pushed more and more emphasis to text. So, in terms of training and things like that. I think, in a digital world, and I guess I'm searching for some clarification here so I don't confuse, and I'm probably confusing. But this is a task like at school. What we're doing is we're training our students in the classroom with a particular corporate sponsor working with us. All right. So this semester we're working with State Farm. Okay. So taking State Farm's message that we have seen all over TV. I mean, that's different than what happens in a interactive communication between a State Farm agent and a potential policyholder. And so we teach our students a greeting that begins the negotiation and gets it off on the right foot. All right. And what you're negotiating for is attention. Attention that will at least get you to first base and allow you to ask qualifying questions so that a salesperson, an agent, can be more objective in how they look at opportunity and qualify it because you don't have a lot of time. And I tell you, the older I get, the more I realize that time is, it's fleeting. You've got to make the most of the limited time you have, and you don't have 25 minutes on the phone with a prospect that's just mounting a resistance for the sake that you called. And I'm having a bad day, so thanks for calling.
Yeah, I hear you. And so that kind of leads me to the next topic because we use the phone, we use email to communicate, but there's the trend now with using video to communicate, which, Peter, I know we've spoken about this before. I'm a big proponent of using video to communicate. I do a lot of video content on social media. Plus, with my prospecting efforts, I use a lot of video to send out, cold call or cold email messages to make them more of a warmer type of lead. So that way they can see me. It humanizes the interaction, and it just makes me stand out a little bit more. Are you starting to see a trend where you see a lot more sales folks going to use video? That's question number one. And then piggyback off that question, do you think that that's just a fad in sales?
Well, let me tell you what the direction in sales is that most salespeople throughout history will avoid making a cold call. All right. It's only a handful that really are disciplined in it. Most people will manage their daily activity to avoid cold calling. So that's why you're seeing an increase in video because it gives the salesperson a sense that they are presenting and they are accomplishing. Whether or not somebody's going to watch the video and act on it, which is really the purpose of making the video, probably not forefront of the mind, and it should be. It's not so much the substance of the video, it's how do you get people to the video. That's where we are with the digital economy we're in. Attention spans are short. You said it was 6 seconds before. How about real time? How about real time? The simple tone of your voice is enough to command the attention of others. You've been there. You've been in a room where somebody shouted out, nobody else was speaking, and somebody said, "Hey!" Everybody turned to look. So how do you shout to separate yourself from the competition, to your point before? So when we take a look at the increase in video, I think you're seeing it for that reason, okay? I think the other reason is that, well, I think I could do a better job explaining the potential value of my product or service by way of video and just like giving it to you from the heart, just mano a mano. It's a feeling. There are a lot of, sales is an emotion laden business, a profession, right? It's emotion laden. A lot of the tactics and strategies that we use in sales are really primarily for our benefit. The prospect's just along for the ride. We have to first feel good about what we're doing in order to execute properly, right? So if video supports that purpose and you get a kick out of it, there's nothing wrong with it because it makes it easier. Here's the upside, right? It makes it easier for me to upload my video to YouTube. All right. The Gold Call show on YouTube is an example of that. I got video from TV appearances and radio shows and things like that. I posted up there, and now it's easier for me to talk to someone like you, Jonathan, and say, I'm in the sales enablement business, a practitioner of business develop, the fine art of business development, and I'm hoping you'll check me out on YouTube. The Gold Call show, right? You want to make it simple for people. Hey, here's why I think you ought to listen. If you have a minute, the Gold Call show, or My Sales Guy, or Salespeople Rule, or Business Owners for Progress.com. Whatever it is, you want to utilize the internet and social media as a landing strip, so to speak, for the attention of others. And so you got to, just like an airport, you got to call in the planes for a landing, and those attention, I call them seeds. When they land, they have a chance to germinate and develop into something. Right now, for me, I'm looking for an endpoint of decision. Jonathan, I want you to share with me, and if you don't mind, me being blunt, forgive me, but if my solutions run anywhere from $500,000 to $2 million, depending on how many seats we fill and how many whatever. Right. So, when it comes to making decisions on things like that, is that something you do alone, or do we need to, invite somebody else to the call? I'm trying to make it simple as I'm talking to you. It's like, look, the budget is $25,000, right?
Yeah.
So my product, the price tag is $25,000. Is that, now that you know what it costs, what do you think? All right, I'm trying to get you back to me. I want to ask a question. What the gold call is really an interview. These questions, I want to pull your attention like a plane coming in for a landing, and I want to put the landing strip lights on and the strobes and all the other things that you need to land a plane at night. And that's where we are as salespeople and entrepreneurs. I'm just coming up with this from the top of my head. I want you to know.
That's the best part. It was just.
Doggone it, I'm an economical airport. All right. And I am the control tower. And in order to get people to land at my airport instead of the other guy's airport, right? Because there's a competing airport. All right. Can you imagine if there were 5 competing airports within 20-mile, right? Can you imagine?
Right. Well, New York has LaGuardia and Kennedy.
That's right. Well, some businesses allow different flight paths to come on in, and that goes to how do you attract attention to your business? How are you doing it, right? But we're all little economic airports trying to be the person that shouts out in the middle of church and people look. And if I can get you long enough and ask you the right question, as to how much focus do you have personally on anything having to do with regulatory reporting?
And I think what you said there, which is key, is that you're talking about, hey, you're almost giving them a call to action where you're saying this is what the price is going to be, because it's about being transparent in the sale nowadays. Because I think you would agree that a lot of buyers, because they're more knowledgeable than they were previously, they can smell a sales guy coming a mile away with the old sales techniques. So what you're saying, if I'm correct, is that being transparent is critical.
And I'm going to sum it up. All right, go. I'm daring you to tell me no.
Well, exactly. Yeah, tell me no, because I want to be transparent. Because if we could be upfront, if I could say, hey, this is what it costs and this is what it looks like. If that makes sense to you, great. If not, I'm not your guy. I could save you 20 minutes right now and back in your day. And I think people appreciate that because you're coming at it from a different approach, and that alone will make you stand out.
You're absolutely right. And let me just take it one more step to your point. Okay. 2 different types of salespeople: salaried and non-salaried, like entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, self-employed people. Now, salary salespeople look at this whole thing differently because they get a salary, so they can afford a lousy sales call. They can afford it. They'll make up for it and whatever. Now, when you're responsible for your own cost of business, cost of sales, market, whatever, you can't afford that. So you have to be bold. You cannot afford to be shy about asking direct questions of prospects, or one of 2 things: you go bankrupt or crazy, or both. And all because when the curtain went up, you were biting your fingernails. The opportunity to close for a next step, whether it be on a cold call or an in-person sales meeting. If you're an entrepreneur, you know in advance that I have to come out of this call or out of this meeting with a yes or no as to what the next step is. Now, if I'm expecting somebody to buy a $30,000 piece of software, after just a handshake, right, and a friendly gesture, that's crazy. But I could save myself a lot of time if I'm a in business for myself by just being straight up.
Mhm.
What's your problem with this? What's your problem with that? If you don't have a problem, whatever. But basically, I can either ask you if you have a budget to fix the problem. Right? I can be upfront
Mhm.
and say, is this a funded project? That's what we used to call it.
Mhm.
Information technology. Is this a funded project? That was a
Mhm.
soft way of asking, do you got any money? Got any books? So, so we're romancing the English language here.
Right, right, right.
We want to say the same thing. Look, take a cue from any politician. I mean, if they told you the truth, the straight up, it wouldn't be tasty.
Mhm. Mhm.
We've got to season our dialogue. So,
Yeah.
but is this a funded project? Or does your spend limit exceed $30,000? Lots of
Mhm.
different, but as a person in business for myself, I cannot
Mm.
go into a meeting or on a sales call with a state of mind that I could take maybe or an in betweener or a think
Mm.
over or whatever. I got.
Mhm.
I just want to because I am responsible for my cost of sales as a
Mhm.
solopreneur. Salary salespeople, somebody else bears the cost. And
Mm.
and I'm not knocking them. They got a good gig. You
Mm.
I
Mm.
know because I was a salary sales, quota carrying, bag carrying, quota chasing sales guy for 20 some odd years.
Right.
I know. I like getting those expense reports back. You know, drove 180 miles at 40 cents a mile and I figured
Right, right, right.
for a new lease for a car. Oh, I hope my former employers aren't listening. But come on, right? Took prospect out to lunch, at the
Yeah,
pump, you know.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, 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 right.
Right. But as soon as when I got that EIN number and started my business for myself, I learned quickly that, every morning I wake up unemployed and I got to do something about it.
Yeah, that's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, that's it. Well, that's really what was behind the gold cover. If I had had a salaried, now I've always been into improving, but
Mhm.
I probably wouldn't have discovered
Mm.
compartmentalized dialogue, which is what this Gold Coast script is. I probably would have never discovered
Mhm.
if I didn't face the problem myself. Nobody gave a damn about it.
Mm.
I mean, I got presented and where they worked at and how good their product was and how many different banks had purchased the product in order to help them achieve greater
Mm.
efficiencies with regards to the blah, blah, blah.
Right,
Nobody.
right.
You have to entertain today. You have to perform the call
Mhm. Mhm.
because
Interesting.
you're not entertaining, and extraordinary is where the money is.
Right.
Well, if you're reserved and shy and look, I don't care if you want to be an introvert off the job.
Mm.
You punch that clock out or whatever time you quit. If you
Mhm.
want to go, you want to be a turtle, go ahead,
Mhm.
have at it. You need a break
Right, right, right.
before you start again tomorrow. But uh, you've got to be on your game because there's people out there that want to do you harm.
Mm.
And I use that term loosely. Harm meaning they don't
Right.
hold best interests at heart. Uh,
Mm.
you never know, and it's always the quiet ones you got to worry about.
Right, right, right. Well, you bring up an interesting dynamic there because you talk about, being in business for yourself versus being a salaried employee and kind of the
Right.
benefits that you have with having an expense report, whereas when you're on your own, you can't have those luxuries. And I will also I would say that whether you're in sales, whether you're a salaried employee or you're going on business for yourself, the fact remains that I honestly believe people used to tell me in the beginning that, oh, you're a great sales guy because you have the gift of gab.
Gift of gab.
And I know that you have, we could be on screen, we're comfortable on a stage, we don't have to worry about, because we're talking about stuff that we love and we know. And so we can speak with passion. I'm half Italian, I speak with my hands all the time. So I'm always doing this all
Hey,
the time. And so I,
hey,
but a lot of people want to be in sales because they see that, salespeople control their own income.
hmm.
But if you don't have the quote unquote gift of gab, can you still be in sales?
Well, you need structured speech. All right. But before you even get the structured speech, you got to have to be comfortable in your own skin. All right. Here's the rule of the day: a person cannot succeed in a role that is inconsistent with how they see themselves conceptually. You can't do it. I'm not going to be a very good fireman. I tell you that right now. And I'm a terrible airline pilot. I wouldn't even be able to. I mean, believe me, the plane started rolling down the runway at 50 miles an hour. I'd be like screaming for help. Right? I cannot perform in a role that is inconsistent. Now, if I see myself as a pilot and I've been spending time on the simulator instead of working, my courage, my knowledge, maybe I have a little bit more aptitude and probably, seeing myself. I mean, I'll still crash the plane, but I'll give it a better try. All right. So that's the first thing to anyone wishing to get into the sales profession. All right. Can you be constructively spontaneous? Can you do that? All right. Now, gift the gab. Today in the digital economy, it's not so much what to say, it's how to say it, but most importantly, knowing when to shut up. Again, we're dealing with real time attention spans, and we've really got to cut to the chase and get to the important stuff quickly, and even managing the tone of our voice in order to capture someone's attention long enough. You know how you climbed on the monkey bars? You had a hold of one, and then you had a reach of faith to grab the next one in front of you. You're hanging, right? You're working your way along. That's how you are with people today. That's exactly what it looks like. And you've got to be quick at it. Not enough to be a good speaker with a gift of gab. It's not. It's knowing how to parse the speech and put a spin on the ball in a way that's delicious. Ears of a sales prospect, or you're just not going to get an audience. You're a performer, I say.
And that leads me to my final point is, the show's called Selling During Crisis, and it was birthed when, I knew a lot of sales reps who were struggling to generate leads and build up their funnel. Their funnel was drier than the Sahara Desert, and they were struggling. They were saying, "What are you doing?" Trying to figure out different premise statements to engage with the prospect. And I said, "Why don't I collect the best minds that I know that are in my network to get together and talk sales, so that way we can help." And I think now that we're, hopefully coming out the end of this and starting to see that things have changed. I
You're
think one
interviewing brilliant minds. What the hell?
Brilliant minds, brilliant minds in sales.
With you.
In sales.
Oh,
now, I great in sales. Don't ask me to go paint the room because I will not do that. So I'm brilliant when it comes to sales. But I will tell you, I would say this, Peter. I think that the misconception was that when COVID hit, that sales was going to change. And I think what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong.
It did for the hot dog vendor.
It did for the hot dog, right? But I think that at the end of the day, the principles of sales are the same. They're going to be the same before COVID. They're the same during COVID, and they'll be the same after COVID, and they'll be the same after you and I are long gone from this earth. Do you agree?
Cost of sales, margin of profit. I mean, supply and demand economics, capitalist economic system. All right. You've got to find a market for a product or service and then adequately create a message and deliver it through a chosen medium, right? Anything from a pay-per-click ad to a blimp and everything in between. And then the process by which you engage in a civil discussion with someone you'd like to hire you or buy from you, and to get that down to a science so that the inhibitors that once frightened you, like I used to have a fear of elevators, so I began to read up on it. That there's a lot of safety devices on an elevator that keep you from going from the 60th floor to the sub basement. Okay. So, same thing with flying an airplane. All right. It's a science. So, today, with short attention spans, the science of composed dialogue in order to get people to pay attention to your message is really important because there's only so much an ad, right, is going to do. It's still a people business. I think they're going to have many robots that are going to be able to emulate and on the fly be able to be spontaneous in conversation. I don't think that's going to happen, and I sure hope it doesn't because I certainly need to keep my job.
Well, listen, I appreciate it, Peter. Thank you so much for hopping on the show and putting in your 2 cents and giving your perspective because I think it helps. What we're doing is just trying to help people who are struggling during this time understand and navigate through this maze of what sales is. And so I really appreciate you being on. Thank you so much.
All right, my friend. Go in peace. I hope our paths cross soon.
Absolutely. One day. So I'm gonna be up there in New York. I'm gonna book a meeting. We're gonna go grab some good pizza, and I'll see you up there.
I'm going to hold you to that, Pilgrim. I'll see you.
Sounds good. See you, sir. So that was episode 16 of Selling During Crisis with Peter Ekstrom, founder and CEO of the Gold Call Training. Hope you liked that show. If you're watching this live, thank you very much for joining. If you're watching this as a previous live, if you have any questions for Peter, just post them in the comments, send me a private message, and I'll make sure I reach out to him and connect with him and connect you guys together so you can ask your questions. So thank you guys very much for watching Selling During Crisis. Happy selling. Go out and sell something. Take care.